I am honored and grateful for the opportunity to stand among such an esteemed group of people at such an important forum and share with you some of my thoughts on energy conservation and the role of energy efficiency in Trinidad and Tobago. Before I get into the meat of my presentation, I would like to commend the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago for successfully hosting an annual event that speaks directly to the sustainability of the energy industries, not just at the national level, but the regional and international level. I also want to applaud their efforts to bring this very important issue of conservation on the national agenda. And I do apologize also for having a slight cough, which I will have to stop from time to time. During last year's conference, I noted the caliber of speakers and the attendees and the quality of various conversations that were held, both formally and informally. And as such, this year I expect that it will be no different. With that said, I would like to add my bit to a conservation topic that has over the decade become an imperative to our survival, not just as an energy producing state, but as a member of the global community. And I dare say they invited me last year, so I suppose I did say something useful last year. That's why they brought me back again. As a society, we are at a juncture that requires a transformation on the way in which we utilize and manage our resources. In my presentation last year, I would have spent some time talking about global warming and the impact on small island development states like ours. I am sure you all are aware of these very real challenges, and so I will not burden you with those today. I would say, however, that in recognition of the impact of climate change, Trinidad and Tobago became a signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This led to the development of a national climate change policy in 2011, along with a framework for the development of a renewable energy policy. In 2015, we signed the Paris Agreement and subsequently completed the Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC Implementation Plan. That plan will serve as a guide for reducing our carbon dioxide emissions at a national level. This was adopted by the relevant United Nations Secretariat in February of last year. Government's vision, as outlined not only in the NDC Implementation Plan, but also in our Vision 2030 documents, place the environment at the center of our socio-economic development in Trinidad and Tobago. As such, legislation and policies to facilitate the addition of renewable energy sources to our energy mix is well on its way. But even as we do this, we must be aware of the socio-economic context that the various factors that impact that eventual transformation, the most obvious being the fact that we are currently the leading Caribbean producer of oil and gas. I spoke about this in detail during my last presentation, so I'll just raise the most salient points today. The first being that T&TEC currently has 4 power purchases agreements with contractual payment obligations which guarantee them sufficient power until somewhere around 2029 based on existing demands. The reality is that to introduce renewable energy at a utility scale before that time would be to pay for power that we do not need. Put in a different way, based on our capacity and based on our contracts that we are signing, we are presently only utilizing 63% of the power that we purchase. It is a fact, however, that renewable energy sources are becoming cheaper as the technology improves. With that in mind, the time will come when bringing renewable energy sources on board will not only facilitate our international obligations, but will make financial sense both from the perspective of reducing gas consumption and also increasing demand. And so, it is my conceptual view that although renewable energy has a place to play, the greater bang for our buck would be achieved by focusing on energy conservation and efficiency at this time. Even these approaches are not without their challenges based on the percentage of utilization that I just mentioned. Conservation and efficiency on the part of consumers, for example, would have an impact on T&TEC's bottom line. When you are paying for 100% and you're only using 63%, you could imagine the financial impact of conservation. Because these parties, when adopted, ensure that consumers use less electricity, which will then result in less revenue for the Commission. Of course, this is just one side of the equation. Conservation and efficiency, when practiced by both consumers and power providers, will not only cut costs, but will bring the additional revenue from a holistic perspective, as the country better utilize the gas that they are using that is being used to produce energy. If you allow me to elaborate on this a little bit, as most of you would be aware, the National Gas Company purchases gas from upstream operators and sell it far below the global market price to T&TEC to be converted to electricity. The opportunity cost of doing this instead of selling the gas on the international market amounts to a loss of close to 20 to 25 million TT dollars over the past 25 years. In fact, if we conserve 20% of the gas we use currently, T&TEC will save close to $200 million, 200 million TT dollars per annum. And if that gas was sold on the international market, we'll earn an additional 400 million TT dollars per annum, which amounts to a total of 600 million TT dollars per annum to the country as a whole. When viewed against the backdrop of some of the information you got previously, all right, and the backdrop of our per capita consumption of electricity, that is among the highest in the Western Hemisphere, that 20% reduction in gas usage seems quite feasible. I would also like to put on record the fact that the current arrangement between NGC, its upstream suppliers, and T&TEC exists primarily for the purpose of providing electricity at a subsidized price to local consumers. In other words, we have sacrificed billions of dollars over an extended period of time to keep the price of electricity low for you. Some might say that this has made us unaware of the true cost of the utility and more prone to waste. In light of the sacrifices made, however, to ensure that the population has access to a cheap and reliable supply, it is incumbent upon consumers to practice conservation and efficiency in their use of this utility. The fact that a gift is given does not mean that we have to waste it. What many of us do not realize is that energy efficiency and conservation is a cost-effective, not just for the government. As I've explained before, but also for the households, companies, and organizations. For example, while the cost of installing and using modern energy-efficient appliances may seem prohibitive, the truth is that because they conserve electricity in the long run, they end up saving us money. And these technologies are also getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And so, as everyday users of these various technologies, we all need to understand that energy conservation and efficiency benefits us all in a variety of ways. In fact, I would like to pose a challenge to all of you gathered here, all these captains of industry. We know that large organizations are always looking for meaningful ways to give back to neighboring fence line communities, I think they call it. What better gift could a corporation give to the people of Trinidad and Tobago than to see energy conservation and energy efficiency as part of their corporate social responsibility, and to engage in it because it will free up gas and give back to the economy. That would be actually not a gift just to a community, but actually a gift to the nation. The national shift towards energy conservation and efficiency requires change, not just in the energy sector, but on all fronts. The main barrier to this sort of transformation is our culture. You know, the way we do things, the habits, the perceptions, the attitudes that we have that have come entrenched in our society. Sometimes, you know, we have to be cruel to be kind. So I ask the question, do we have an energy conservation culture, or do we have a culture of waste? What is needed is a paradigm shift in how we perceive and utilize all of our resources, from our waste, which is also a resource, to our water. For example, are we still watering our lawns using hoses to wash our cars in this extreme dry season, in spite of me talking about it over and over and over again? Are we trying to buy single-use plastics and throwing them out of our windows? Are we turning off our lights when we leave a room? These behaviors are all linked. And once we start to move the public consciousness towards conservation and energy, we will begin to see a change in each of these areas. Of course, one way of encouraging behavioral change with regard to our utilities and related resources will be to restructure our tax regimes. As I mentioned before, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago benefit from extremely low rates on their utilities. In the case of electricity, the current rate is the lowest in the region and is 1/6 of what is being paid in neighboring countries. I think you should take a little look and sober in that particular graph before us. Whilst our water rate are among the lowest in the Western Hemisphere. That's kind of where we exist there. And as a matter of fact, if according to the data, I think our water rate is probably around the second lowest, or around the top 5 lowest in the world. But restructuring the tax regime with regard to utilities is just one way in which we can facilitate conservation and greater efficiency. And we should not have to resort to that to bring about a change. Another strategy that are currently engaging the ministry is the development of policy instruments that will speak to increasing awareness through public education, enforcing penalties for the mismanagement and overuse of these utilities, and supply and demand side management programs with their associated projects and activities. We are also aware that as a nation, we are behind the curve with regard to conservation and efficiency. And so my ministry is researching some of the strategies and interventions that are being implemented in other neighboring countries with a view of introducing the relevant ones to our landscape. At the national level, the work has already begun on the 2017-2018. In 2017-2018, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards collaborated with the ministry and other stakeholders to develop the Regional Energy Efficiency Building Code, which guides the design and construction of buildings. And in the area of waste management, the government is pursuing legislation in keeping with the reduce, reuse, and recycle philosophy. That legislation, which will lay the framework for a deposit refund system for beverage containers, will be passed in the coming months. And it's the first of other waste management related bills that will be brought before the House. But even as we lay legislative and regulatory frameworks that will facilitate the shift towards conservation and efficiency in the use of our utilities, we invite the involvement of stakeholders at every level. And when I say stakeholders, I'm not speaking about the executives who make the decision to invest in more efficient technology for his company. I'm also talking about the homeowner who buys a LED bulb for her house and turns them off whenever she leaves, or he or she leaves the room. Conservation and energy efficiency must be implemented in every aspect of our lives if we are to really change the current paradigm. There's a saying that if you wish to go fast, go alone. If you wish to go far, go together. The transformation that we are seeking as we continue to build this nation will not happen overnight. It requires that we all buy into the vision of a better Trinidad and Tobago, and that we all work towards it systematically and persistently. I noted with some degree of satisfaction that tomorrow a charter on energy efficiency will be signed among companies in the upstream and downstream sector. Is that correct, sir? Today. It will be signed today. It will be declared today. You know, I'm saying it is noteworthy that this initiative is being undertaken without any incentives or tax breaks, right? It is being done because it is the right thing to do. And this type of initiatives is the type of initiatives that I hope that will be followed by this chamber. What they are putting together will be followed not only by this chamber, but by chambers and manufacturers associations throughout Trinidad and Tobago as they take the initiative, recognizing the need for conservation and the need for the protection of our natural resources. And they do it and they inculcate it in their organizations as a way of facilitating change. Conservation is something of contributing that will help us financially, and it will also be just good sense as we try to preserve this beautiful island of ours. I thank you very much for the few minutes that you have given me to listen. And again, I wish you all a safe journey on your way back to your respective homes. Thank you very much.